Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Gig Harbor City Council study session of Thursday, March 17th, 2022. The time is 2:02 p.m. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. And I will turn it over to our city clerk for a roll call.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Barber.
Here.
Councilmember Denson.
Here.
Councilmember Henderson.
Here.
Councilmember Likens.
Here.
Councilmember Rodenberg.
Here.
Councilmember Storsett.
Here.
And Councilmember Wook.
Here.
All 7 present and accounted for.
Okay, great. So our first item of business is our council retreat follow-up and work strategic plan. And I will turn this over to our city administrator, Tony Kiyosaki.
Thank you, Your Honor. Appreciate it. Good afternoon, council. Good to see you all. Glad to see mostly green out there. Anyway, that fell flat. Thank you, Councilmember Wook. So council had the retreat on January 29th. You came up with 5 priorities for the city. You rank ordered them, even though we don't have them in, we didn't put the numbers on here, but they are in the order that you placed them. And then you asked staff to follow up to start working on a plan for the city to achieve these priorities over the next 2 years, or at least get as far into them as we can. So I'll be honest, Josh was the one who took that and ran with it. What you see here, this wonderful document, Josh took the first crack at. He put it in this format, took your priorities. He created some goals for those priorities. Most of those, if you look through the budget, you'll find that they are right out of the budget. I think we added 1 or 2. And then some actions that we can take to fulfill those goals and priorities. Excuse me. And then some action steps or actual projects that we could do that would allow us to say that we are meeting these goals and priorities. As we said in the agenda bill itself, as we were looking at these, we were looking particularly at the priorities the council set. And it just occurred to us that some of them weren't quite worded the right way. They were more of a goal or even an action step. But we knew what the concept was that you were looking for. So we took a shot at rewording 3 of the priorities, but we kept the exact language that you had for those priorities. We just shifted it over, excuse me, into a different part of the strategic plan matrix. Excuse me. So what I'd like to do is I want to start there. I want to make sure that I give council an opportunity to look at those changes we proposed just to your priorities, the way we reorganize this, and make sure you're okay with this. So if you would give me your thoughts on that, I would appreciate it.
And we're going to have Josh put this document up on the screen and kind of just live edit as council is providing comment, if that's okay with everybody. Councilmember Rodenberg, did you have a question?
No, he wanted my comment.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Comments,
Yeah,
please.
I read through these, and I'm satisfied with all the wording. I think Josh did a good job of determining what an action plan was from a goal. So thank you, Josh, and I'm happy with it.
Thank you. Well, we'll talk about the substance of them here in a few minutes, but just for now, I want to make sure you're okay with the rewording that we did. So thank you, council member.
Any other council members wish to comment or provide feedback? Okay.
So Josh, why don't you put the document up on the screen?
Can everyone see that okay?
Looks pretty good from where I'm looking, but can everyone else read it? Okay. So let's start with the priorities themselves. I want to make sure that even though I've already asked for your comment on that, if there's any additional wording changes that you'd like to make to these, or if they do reflect what you want to do, we can go on to the goals and the actions themselves. Okay.
Okay, I have a, excuse me, I can't figure out how to raise my hand, so I'm trying to figure that out. But I don't see it on on the,
If you just pull your mouse down, if you move your mouse around, the little bars on the bar in the bottom should show you the raise
it
hand.
just appeared. I'm on my iPad, so it's a
Okay.
completely different interface. Okay, I did have one wording change that I wanted to make in one of the actions. If you wanted to talk about that now or later.
On the action, actually, what I want to do is let's talk about each priority and go across. the
Okay.
page. So
Okay,
foster a healthy city organization. The goals that we have for this is be an exceptional employer, retain existing workforce, attract quality applicants, ensure a safe work environment, encourage staff training, and encourage and obtain employee feedback. Is there anything other goals we could add to that? Are either any of these goals things that we shouldn't be doing, or should we be rewording them? Josh, you're batting 1,000 so far.
All right.
Actions. What we put in here is, as the title says, routine and annual. These are actions that we should be doing every year. We should always fill vacancies in a timely manner. Maintain effective procedures to respond to ADA, FMLA type issues and situations. We want to maintain a collaborative relationship with our unions. We want to requalify for AWC Well City designation. Now, these things, quite frankly, we could put in probably a dozen, if not more, for this particular priority, but these are kind of the big ones. And if there's any other big ones that you think we could be putting in here, I'd like to hear that from council. All right. Nope. Councilmember Likens has raised your hand.
Yeah, just a quick question on the AWC Well City designation.
Yes.
I know that AWC has put emphasis on having diversity, equity, inclusion, education, et cetera. Is that a part of that? Does the city need to have a plan for that?
As I understand the Well City designation, that is not part of the process.
Okay.
It's more with regards to employees' health and
Okay.
what sort of actions are they taking to keep themselves healthy?
Okay, great.
Do they even know what their health issues are? One of the big things that AWC does is ask employees to take a survey, and they ask them, do you know your numbers? And you know what those are, council member, your blood pressure, your cholesterol,
Yeah.
and a variety of things like that.
Yeah.
And then it talks about, how much do you drink? Do you smoke? How much exercise do you get? And it's just a way to get employees
Sure.
thinking about that. Then there's other activities they can engage in that help us maintain that designation.
Sure.
And why that is an annual thing, and it up here, because not only does it help our employees stay healthier, but if, as long as we maintain that designation, we receive a 2% reduction in the premiums that we pay for our health insurance. And that's a
Yeah.
substantial amount of money.
Yeah, I remember during the retreat, I thought that somebody brought up diversity, equity, and inclusion as a way to fill the vacancies and, make the city, maybe a more attractive place to work for some applicants. And I didn't see it as part of the plan. So, yeah, we can talk further about that as you go along. I was just wondering if that fit in there. So,
Well, I think it does fit in more into an action or a project.
yeah,
To
I
create
agree.
a program like that. And you could argue it might fit into the very first item on there, the priority goal 1, develop a staff and retention and attraction program. But
Sure.
maybe it should stand alone. So
Sure. And that's up for discussion. I just was wondering. Thanks.
thank you.
I know there is some kind of a program that Camille was working with in regards to DEI, but I don't remember what it's called or what that is, but to list it out would be good because then we can make sure that that does go forward.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rodenberg?
Yes, I recall that the former HR director had the requalify AWC Well City designation as one of the large things that she accomplished. But when we go about that, it's certainly important to be designated in that regard. But if you recall on the employee survey, there was a lot of comments about the Well City designation. So as we move forward with an action plan, we ought to reread some of those comments. Specifically, they felt some of it was intrusive, and some of them they thought the exercise plans were not appreciated and didn't want to do it. So I'm just urging us to take a look at those comments and if we can, try to address them when we come up with the action plan to be requalified or continue to be qualified.
I think that's a good point. We need to take a look at what the employees were concerned about. And those items that we control, we should address those. And those that we can't, that are required by AWC, we need to understand A, from AWC, why those things are in there, and B, communicate that to the employees so they understand what it is being asked of them. And I get what you're saying when it comes to the intrusiveness of some of that, because there were some health questions that were asked that I found were somewhat personal. But as long as that information is being kept confidential, it's not being released by employee, but only as a general statistical analysis, I think it's okay. But I think point well taken, and we will certainly keep that in mind as we move forward on this. Okay, under actions project, we took the priority goal number 1 that council had set and turned it into an action, develop a staff retention and attraction program. So with your permission, council, we will take the wording priority goal 1 off and take the yellow highlighting off of that, and it will simply become an action, a project. Great. So I'm going to suggest that we, right now, Josh, add an item that does talk about DEI. And it should be something along the lines of review and update the city's DEI program. And I'll point out, as you can see at the end of this one, there's an asterisk. And you'll see several others along here that have asterisks. Those represent items that are not called out in the city's budget right now. So actually, we have quite a few things that meet the priorities and goals that council have that we had already planned to do. So I was very pleased to see that. And the ones with the asterisks are the ones that are a new item that we have put in here for you. So as far as the projects here for the Foster Healthy City Organization, Council, are you okay? I'm sorry, Councilmember Barber, you have your hand up.
Yes, I got it upright. So I have a question on those items that are not funded in the 2022 budget that were priorities from the retreat, like the develop a staff retention and attraction program. How do those items will, especially in this case, it would be the new HR person, but will they come back for funding, or will there be some determination on those projects? How will those occur?
Well, you're jumping forward in the process.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I'll just say it briefly that once we've established all of the items here in this matrix, the next step is for staff to take, in particular, all of these action project items and start figuring out timing wise and budget wise, can we get them done in the next 2 years? And if we can't, what resources do we need to make them happen?
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions or rewrites or additions to this particular priority action projects? Great, thank you very much. So the next item is ensure a sustainable future for public services and facilities. And that's the new priority for provide more efficient and effective municipal services, which is more of a goal. So if council, you're comfortable with that, I'll ask Josh to go ahead and fix that one up like he did the first one. Great. Okay, under the goals for this priority, provide more efficient, effective municipal services, fill gaps in public outreach on capital projects, increase communication between the city and residents, better understand community needs and service expectations, make city meetings more accessible to residents online, source funding and implement plans for city parks and recreation, streets, transportation options, and utilities. So thoughts or comments on those goals? Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you. I'm thinking that term fill gaps in public outreach and capital projects, maybe it's just improve public outreach on capital projects.
Personally, I agree with you. I think that's good wording. Rest of the council, is that make it okay? I'm seeing head nods and thumbs up. Cool. And by the way, you'll see over in actions, I have an item, create a citywide communications plan. And that would actually help not only with that item, but with a whole bunch of other things. Councilmember Denson.
Thank you, Tony. What does the last one mean? Source funding. What does source funding mean?
I take that to mean that we need to, in a very broad way, understand how we are funding all of these various items. So parks, rec, streets, transportation, utilities. And not that we aren't strategic enough, but we need to be a little more strategic as to what our various options are for monies and how can we go get it and what do we really want to use that funding for. And I'll take the acquisition of open space and conservation futures, RCO, and a variety of things like that. I think we should, and I don't know if it's exactly a plan, but it's certainly have an understanding of the limitations of those funds, the strings that are attached to those funds, and do we want to have a funding mechanism that is as flexible as possible when it comes to how we go about funding things. And I see Councilmember Rodenberg has raised his hand.
Yeah, I realize that the exercise we're doing today is to approve this sheet, not necessarily to say, I know how to do this action item.
Right.
But I forget things. So I just have to make this one last comment.
Sure.
And that is that I recall when I first came on to council, I had difficulty knowing what could get funded from this fund, what was an enterprise fund, what is the hospital benefit district fund, what it doesn't fund. And maybe it already exists. I'm kind of getting a handle on it now, but I have to go look it up every time. If we had some sort of spreadsheet, maybe Dave or somebody could put together, if it doesn't already exist, I think that would be a good idea for all of us to know where do the monies come from, what's the strings attached, et cetera.
And I think that does exist in Dave's head.
That's the issue.
Yeah. So, and he may have it written down somewhere. Dave, you're on mute if you're saying something.
Oh, it's written down in various shapes and forms in a lot of places. The way I understand it is you would like a matrix of our projects and the funding sources that support those.
Well, not necessarily the projects, the types of projects. Like hospital benefit zone can be used for roads only within this parameter, within this map, not necessarily the Stinson Harbor View project needs this. So just the type of project it can be used for. And in the case, speaking about roads, if it's federal funding, what are the drawbacks, like extra requirements and that kind of thing. So, and I'm not talking, hopefully we could make it simple and not too time consuming to come up with, but just something we could use as a reference. Again, I apologize for getting into the nuts and bolts, and I know that's not what we're doing right now.
No, but that helps us understand
Glad you asked.
your perception of what this is and the needs that you have in order to be able to make good decisions. And I'll just simply say for Dave, think of it this way: REAP 1 can be used for what? REAP 2 can be used for what? Sales tax can be used for what? Utility tax can be used for what? And then what are the implications of those various revenue sources? So you and I can sit down and talk about putting a one-pager together that I think will help council quite a bit.
I think I already have it somewhere. I can't lay my fingers on it right now, but
Cool.
we've been here before, so I think I have something.
All right, thank you. Other thoughts on the goals for this priority? So moving across the page then, the actions, the routine annual stuff that we do. Update utility rates as needed. Support free vessel pump out service. Continue implementing permit and land use approval process improvements. Continue, and when possible, increase resources dedicated to capital improvement projects. Review and amend the TIP to improve motorized and non-motorized transportation. Dave, are there any other routine things, Jeff, that you can think of that we will be doing year in, year out to deal with these things? I see Councilmember Henderson has his hand up.
Well, let's go ahead and finish asking
Okay.
Jeff.
I don't have anything else to add for the routine side on this priority.
Okay, thanks.
I have nothing else either.
Okay, then you're up, Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, thank you. I'm thinking that support free vessel pump out service, that almost could go down to promote environmental sustainability, because I believe the purpose of the free vessel pump out is people don't dump their waste in the harbor, going in or out of the harbor in Puget Sound, just because they don't have anywhere to pump out. So it might be, it could also fit easily under, I guess, promote environmental sustainability. Because I know, as I mentioned yesterday or the other day on that Whisper update, this whole issue with vessel pump outs and people living on them and dumping into the Puget Sound has become a lot more critical issue than it was before. So it's up to you. I mean, as long as it's somewhere, I'm okay.
It's up to council. Council members, what do you think about that? Does that seem like a reasonable move to make for that item?
I agree.
And
I think it belongs in improved services. The byproduct would be it promotes environmental sustainability, but it is actually a service that we do, and hopefully we get compensated for it somewhere.
Well, there's nothing that says it can't appear in both.
yeah, and I was just going to add that I agree with Councilmember Rodenberg. It's a service we provide that has a benefit in sustainability, environmental protection.
Well, Council, what would you think if we were to put it under both that and promoted environmental sustainability?
I'm fine with it being in both places. As long as it's in improved services. Because I think when we get to that conversation, again, I know we're not talking about how we're going to implement, but
Right.
How are we going to get compensated for that? Since they don't, probably people on boats don't pay stormwater, they don't pay sewage and that kind of thing. There should be some kind of, we're providing that service. There should be some kind of compensation to the city.
Dave, don't we get some sort of a little stipend from the state for doing that?
It's actually where the city provides funding to the contractor and the county who's leading the contract.
Okay.
So there it is. The city's providing the funding, so it's costing us money and not getting reimbursed for it.
Okay. I'm thinking of a different program, I think. Okay, other comments on the actions routine annual? Great. So let's move on to actions and projects. On this list, and quite frankly, I could probably throw a whole lot more in there, but this is a really good start. Develop an online citizen concern form. The one I really like, one I added, is conduct a citizen satisfaction survey, create a citywide communications plan, update our public works standards, which Jeff has on his work plan to start this year, conduct an HOA fair, implement hybrid court systems and electronic case management, which we are doing, implement hybrid city meetings platform, and develop a neighborhood traffic calming policy. And I see Councilmember Barber has her hand raised.
Okay, I do, and I have one specific comment and then one that's more about the first three items.
Okay.
I would like to develop an online citizen comment form, because ideally I would hope that we want to enable our citizens to be able to provide us feedback, and we want positive feedback as well as negative feedback. So I'd rather change it to emphasizing commenting and communication rather than negative concerns.
Yeah,
Yes.
the first form of this was a citizen's complaint form, and that sounded really negative.
Yeah,
Concern sounds a little bit more neutral, but I honestly, I like what you're saying. I like a citizen comment form.
yeah. I'd rather have the two-way communication be emphasized. And then my thinking, and this is putting my communications hat on, that form, the Citizens Advisory Survey, Citizens Satisfaction Survey, are all part of a citywide communications plan, because that plan, I'm assuming one of the goals of the plan is increasing two-way communications with our residents. And then if you have that as a goal on the plan, the tactics that support that goal include an online citizens comment form, a citizen satisfaction survey, and 15,000 other things. Laura's gonna
Right.
have a lot to do on that one. That is a giant project.
I agree with you. However, I think a satisfaction survey and a comment form should be done sooner than later. I would suggest that the communications plan be put together in a outline format. These items will obviously be in there, and then you can kind of have those going along a parallel track.
Right. The other thing that I want to make sure of with the citywide communications plan and the two items, and a lot of these things all overlap between, I mean, writing a communications plan is Laura's responsibility because that's her job title, but she needs to include public works and planning, and all the departments need to feed into that plan, and everything should be copacetic within it and all tie together. And I'm really excited that this is a goal item.
Well, it's something that I've done previously in other organizations, and I think it's invaluable. And you can blow that thing up to be as big and detailed as you want. I
Yeah.
wouldn't go quite that far, but
Yeah.
I like the idea
wouldn't either.
of us being very deliberate with the way that we communicate, the way we ask for feedback, and how we process that feedback. So thank you for your comments, and I like changing that to comment, unless some council members object. Councilmember Likens, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. So on I wrote down online citizen concern, and then I was going to say and add suggested resolutions or ideas. I think, if people want to keep it as a concern form as opposed to comment, I'm fine either way with the wordsmithing. But I think some of our citizens have great ideas about how to do things, and just to hear them out, whether they're feasible or not, or cost effective or not, is another thing, but might just be nice to open the door to suggestions. And then as far as the citywide communication, I know we talked about doing the listening, being present at the market, being present at the concerts, and then possibly even a quarterly, town hall exchange with citizens. Would that be a part of that communication plan?
Yes, it would.
Okay.
I've had those kind of things in communications plans I've done before as well.
Okay, that's what I thought. And I didn't want to get down to the nitty gritty, like you were saying, it could be huge. But I like the idea of just adding, citizen, ideas form as well as just concerns. Thanks.
And when we get to the point of actually creating that online form, I think the concepts that you're throwing out there are really good. And when we put it together, whatever we call it, there also needs to be that description for people to read as to what they're supposed to do with this.
Right, exactly.
And that will say, this is your opportunity to tell us your ideas for making the city better, concerns that you have with anything we're doing. Let us know if there's something we're not doing. Let us know if there's something we're doing well and you like it.
Yeah, absolutely. Great, thanks.
Councilmember Watt.
Thank you. Since I brought this form up, the purpose of this form, a lot of cities do this. They allow the citizens to say, hey, there's a pothole at this intersection right here, and they report it to the city. And then they can watch where the department goes to, and they can see the fact that the pothole was filled. So I don't much care what it's called, but I would like to see, I think we need to have a place, some sort of form where our citizens can say about tree in the road, about pothole here, that they can watch what departments it goes to, and they can watch their concerns or whatever they want to say get filled and get taken care of. That was the purpose of that form. And I don't much care what it's called. If we want to wordsmith it, that's fine. But I think we need to have a place for our citizens to be able to express something like that.
I would suggest then let's add the word, it'll be a citizen comment / reporting form. And I think that encompasses everything that we've talked about here and still sound in a more neutral to positive way rather than saying complaint or
Right.
something like that. But I think the concepts you're bringing is forward is very, very important, that as citizens be able to report things to us and then be able to see what is happening with their report. The system should be set up to provide them. The first thing they get back is thank you very much for your report. Thank you very much for your comment. We'll be following up on it as soon as we can or something like that. And then let's say it's a pothole. When the pothole gets filled, it would be really nice if someone could go online and said pothole filled, and that was automatically sent to the citizen to say, hey, what you told us about has been taken care of.
Well, it would be nice actually if that process of getting the pothole filled, the citizen could watch it go through the process. And we don't even really need to have a staff member particularly get back to them unless it can be an automatic thing. But and maybe it can be once it's done, and once Public Works has reported that the pothole's filled, maybe it's just an automatic thing that goes back to the citizens. But at least somewhere so that they, you know, I don't want to take up a lot of staff time, so I just wanted to have it there so citizens can go back to that forum to see that their report was handled.
Okay.
Tony, I know Laura's not here or Katrina, but I believe there is a software program that they are considering bringing before council to consider that will do that very thing. And it's very automated and really, really cool, very easy to use. I think it's called something like Engagement HQ or something like that. And I've seen some prototypes of it. It's really, really great for two-way conversations, back, forth, and updating and all of that very thing you just said. And so I hope that, I know they're working on it for sure and getting some more, they're watching some more videos on it and things like that. So, but I'll specifically mention that part of it to them and see if that is what this software can do. But I think that's it. I think it is. And that's why they're looking at it so carefully. And it would be across all departments, and each department director would have the ability to be the one that has charge of their own projects and their own updates with that software. So it would be really great if it works.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
Okay. Councilmember Rodenberg.
Yeah, I like this idea for a lot of reasons, and I have some ideas about it. But one of the reasons I like it is right now, the social media, Facebook, all those accounts are used to complain about the city, and we don't respond to them. We shouldn't be responding to them. And then they each feed on one another, and pretty soon there's a frenzy and they want to stop the sports complex or something. So I think I really like the idea, But I also see on social media, some of the people that respond to things going in the city, they live in Houston, Texas, and Boise, Idaho, and they are just people that sit in their basement eating Cheetos on social media and making complaints all over the country. So I'm wondering if we can't have some kind of registration. We're open to anybody, but if you're citizens and you want to make a comment, sign up here and you can comment forever. But it should be something so we know they're legitimate. Another thing, I think that if we're going to ask them for their solutions, we need to be prepared to tell them why the solution wasn't adopted. Nobody likes to make a comment and an idea and then be ignored because they'll quit using the platform. Somebody gets on there and says we ought to paint the lighthouse purple. We need to be able to get back to them and say, U.S. Coast Guard prevents white lighthouses from being purple, or some kind of response and why we didn't use an idea that they thought was really great. So just my 2 cents.
I agree with you, and that kind of falls under the category, be careful what you wish for. And think through what it is you're doing and asking, and understand that you don't want to create expectations that you can't meet. So anything else for this item? All right, let's move on to the priority goal number 3, which is maintain small town character and historic preservation while growing responsibly. That is a priority. The goals are to promote reasonable growth, address infrastructure issues to relieve traffic issues, ensure adequate affordable housing, focus on character retention and historic preservation, foster safe, livable, and attractive community, decrease distance to get to a park or open space, and then install more sidewalks. And Councilmember Henderson's raised his hand already.
Thank you, Tony. Well, I've been thinking about this one. Install more sidewalks is more of a action project. I mean, that's kind of specific. I was thinking maybe we could move that over to the actions project and then replace that with maybe something like, and I just scribbled it down. I don't know if we could wordsmith it a little bit, but enhance walkability and pedestrian cyclist safety. So that's more of a goal. Sidewalks clearly would enhance walkability. Just my thought.
Council, your thought on that? Councilmember Storsett.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Roger. I think that's a great rewording. I was thinking the same thing of shifting it over, just slightly different, choice of words on the first,
Yeah.
but nothing worth mentioning. Thanks.
Thanks, Seth.
The rest okay with that?
Yeah, it could be something like non-motorized connectivity or something like that, right, Roger?
Yeah, it certainly could. I want to keep it simple though, so people see it, because non-motorized, well, I mean, let's write it down and take a look at it. So enhance walkability and pedestrian/cyclist safety.
There's some good wording right in the text of what we're looking at when it comes to the ideas that we presented, and it has to do with non-motorized transportation. So that could probably be adapted.
Councilmember Wook?
Yes, as I was doorbelling, every single house wanted to slow growth, not have responsible growth. They wanted to slow it. So this to me sounds like we're in favor of growth, and that's not what our community wants. So I don't know what we can do to change those words. Maybe we can say something about making sure that infrastructure is installed before growth, but this is not what our community wants. This is not what they want. Right.
Councilmember Storsett.
Yes. So I guess first I'll just comment back, follow on Jenny's on the responsible growth portion. I totally agree with you. I think that's something we have heard from a lot of our community on slowing growth. But the responsible portion of that, and knowing that there is certain things that we have to provide, and some housing has come before other infrastructure, does require us in a way to catch up and to where we are currently. I think it's also the right word choice as far as growth plans and such. So the other part, I think we ended up leaving it out of there, but my second comment was going to be on the enhanced walkability and pedestrian. I know we heard comments on motorized. There's some people that use, say, because they're handicapped, use motorized wheelchairs. So I think like leaving that kind of stuff out, of course, within discretion. We don't want to see like, anybody being erratic on a powered bicycle, for example. But I think it's good the way it is. So I didn't hear a decisive answer or whether or not we were going to include motorized.
I think I would argue when you talk about pedestrian and cyclist safety, you have to include it in part of that analysis, how the motorized public, we'll call it, is impacting pedestrians and cyclists. So I think an electric bike would fall into that, a scooter or electric wheelchair, things like that people who are unable to walk as well as others who are using those type of devices. It's all part of the discussion and the analysis. Councilmember Wood?
Yes. So I see that it says address infrastructure issues to relieve traffic issues. I think we need one to address infrastructure issues to address development.
So maybe we could, didn't raise my hand, sorry.
Raise your hand, Roger. Somebody help me with the wording here. But I don't think the infrastructure should just be for traffic issues. I think the infrastructure should be for all issues as we do this growth thing.
So remember, this is under the priority maintain small town character. So a big issue with that is how your traffic is managed and goes through your city. I'll argue other infrastructure issues like having an adequate water system and a sewer system doesn't do anything to maintain a small town character or preserve the historic areas. It's more of ensure a sustainable future for public facilities and services.
So can we go back and add that up there then?
We could add a goal with regards to infrastructure. Yeah, I think we could.
I think it would be important to have, because also when we are door billing, people want to have the infrastructure in place first. And we all know that the infrastructure is not, but I think we should, I think we should put it in there and acknowledge the fact that it's important to have the infrastructure.
How about something along the lines of ensure adequate infrastructure to support community needs and expectations?
Sure. Unless somebody's got a better idea, sure.
I'm going on the fly here, Councilman. Councilmember Rodenberg.
Yeah, last year we passed an ordinance having to do with speed limits for electric scooters, wheelchairs, electric bikes, where they could be ridden, where they can't be ridden, sidewalks or not, what streets, etc. And there's a lot of definition in there about what's wheeled, what's not, what's motorized. So whatever we do here, we should make sure that it aligns with those definitions, as the chief went to a lot of trouble to research and find out what other cities were doing. So just so the language is the same and not confusing with an ordinance that we already have in place.
Thank you. Councilmember Barber.
I was wondering if, thinking about the promote responsible growth, if we could add to that so that it had, because I see some of that as not just being residential, some of it is small businesses and that kind of thing. So it's promote responsible growth in keeping with maintaining the town's character and historic preservation. If we can add, like, kind of restating the main priority there too. Promote responsible growth in keeping with the small town character. I don't know how people feel about that.
Council? We have a couple ahead. I got 3, 4 thumbs up. Josh, why don't you go to put that in there? And there we go. All right, how does that read? Okay. Any other thoughts on the goals here before I move on to actions?
I also wonder the infrastructure that went, the ensure adequate infrastructure to support community needs.
Yes.
Does that belong in the next block instead of sustainable up and ensure sustainable future?
I think it's one of those that
It can go either way.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So I'll ask council, where do you want to see that? Here or down in the next item?
I'm good where it is.
I am too, at least it's somewhere.
Yeah, I'm good where it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So moving on to actions routine annual for the maintain small town character. We have an annually docket specific priorities in the comp plan. And I will comment that that is something we do. However, I think it's important when you are putting together a plan like this that you make sure that the people that are reading this understand that we do this every year because it's important, even if it is required by law. The next one is very specific as far as an action, an annual item is provide funding support for the Harbor History Museum. And that is a goal or whatever objectives that is in the council's budget right now. So we just pulled that out and placed it there because it seems to be a pretty important item that helps with both of these both of these issues in the priority. So, Councilmember Wood.
Yes, we also set aside 25,000, I think, for the Downtown Waterfront Association. So perhaps that should be in there as well.
That's down under support and enhance a dynamic and robust.
Oh, I see it down there. Thanks so much.
Oh, I like the way you do that, Josh. Make it blink red so we all see it. Cool. Monitor state legislative activity. Quite frankly, this can probably go into 2 or 3 of these things. But given some of the things that we dealt with this year in the legislature, with regards, think about it with density, with even the police issues that were up, those all have to do with helping us maintain a small town character. So I would leave it here, but understand that we always monitor the legislature to make sure we know exactly how it's affecting all aspects of the community. Councilmember Denson.
Yes, this may just be a comment. I don't know if anything needs to be added, but I've had a couple people tell me that when we say small town character, it seems like we're only thinking of the historic downtown waterfront area. And I admit that I'm guilty of that. And people in Gig Harbor North and Uptown also want the small town character. And I don't know what it looks like for those communities different from here, but just keep that in mind as we're talking about. They're like, we want small town character up here too.
Right.
Doesn't say they can't have it. I mean, the character is the character and it encompasses the whole city, in my opinion.
Yeah, they just want to make sure we're also doing things for them too, to promote the small town character.
Well, and that comes from a variety of ways. I mean, with your design guidelines, the zoning regulations, building height, building setbacks, all those sort of things, you can create a community look that it looks small town because that's what people are asking for. So when I see that wording, Councilmember, that is citywide. And I think as we move forward with a whole variety of particularly zoning issues, we make sure we keep in mind that we need to look at all parts of the community and not just the historic downtown area. Councilmember Book.
And do you think that's covered then under the annual docket, specific priorities? In the
Yes,
comp plan?
absolutely. Yes.
All right. Thanks.
The next item on here is funding support for the senior center programming. I think this is a really important one to include in here. And I was very pleased to see council set aside money in this year's budget to help support the building of a senior center itself. I think how the type of programming, the type of activities, the type of facilities you have for the seniors in the community, particularly those who are not as well off and who have issues, they need to have places to go and things to do. And a senior center is a great place for that. Councilmember Rodenberg.
Yes, well, I have a little bit of a concern with this. What happens if a larger organization swallows up the senior center activities? We've committed $550,000 to the senior center. And is that all for a building, or is that some operational expenses? And do we really want to commit to an annual commitment when I know that there's organizations looking to swallow them up right now? So that's my question. What happens to that money? And do we want to continue to say that?
I would say that if there isn't a larger nonprofit organization that wants to jump in and start doing more for seniors, and they approach the city and say, can you partner with us? Just like you partner with the Chamber of Commerce, the Downtown Waterfront Alliance, for particular services and activities, you could do that. And if they said, we're going to build a senior center and we want the city's participation, you can do that. And you can use the funding that's already been set aside. The bottom line and the short answer to that, council member, is that's the council's choice. You have options and you have the ability to say, yes, we want to do that with a partner, or no, we do not. But the good news is you have the money set aside in the budget to do something if you so choose. Councilmember Storsett.
Yes, thank you. I also like this one on the senior center programming. On with the addition to it, what I'd be curious about, and this isn't necessarily something to add, but maybe it's the asterisks of future funding, but looking at a youth center as well, which I think the YMCA provides. They provide this whether you're a member or a member through some of their programs. We did have this, at the Boys and Girls Club before it became Pioneer, and that changed. But definitely looking at this very young generation, the elementary schools that we're building for them, there is a need for, beyond just the parks, especially in our winter months, of having a good place, safe place for kids to go. So just something to consider. I don't know that at this point it's something we add on there. For something like this, it would be down the road, but I'd like to hear other people's thoughts.
It could be something along the lines of consider providing support to youth and teen programs. It could be something along those lines. Councilmember Henderson.
I was just going to say, or we could say funding support for senior center / youth center programming, or youth activities or youth programs. But I like Seth's idea to involve the youth too.
Well, funding support for seniors and youth. Councilmember Likens.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. So Councilmember Storsett and I have actually talked about working together, and I've talked with some other people about this, and we were going to be meeting in the next weeks about a youth council. And I realized I don't know if it goes up under the action projects, and I don't think it's going to be very costly. It's just something that we're going to put some energy into. Mm-hmm. But when you're looking at youth programs, some of that stuff could come out of working with a youth council that both Seth and I are very interested in getting going here in the city. So I support his ideas as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Wook.
Yes, I support the idea for the youth, but I would like to see them on two separate lines.
Okay,
Poor seniors feel like they get overlooked so often. So I think I'd rather see it on two separate lines.
okay. Councilmember Rodenberg.
We could combine it into one line by just saying support citizen services, specific citizen services or something. That way we're not calling out seniors necessarily. We're not calling out the youth, and it gives us more flexibility in where we direct our action, depending on the need, depending on what Councilwoman Likens and Councilmember Storsett come up with. That would just make it more flexible, I think.
Councilmember Barber.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar. What I was thinking of was changing it to funding support for senior/youth programming. And the word senior and youth are lowercase. So it becomes less specific than the way it's written now. It's a senior center. So it would be more for senior and youth programming.
Center seems to imply a building.
A building, yeah.
So
This is taken right out of the budget.
Yeah,
I was gonna say it's in the budget.
yeah, there's money for a building and there's money for programming.
well,
They're two different things.
that in itself is problematic in as much as if another entity swallows up the seniors, then, and they already have a building and they're just going to provide services in their existing building, then we have that money in the budget for a building that is no longer needed.
Then you get to reprogram it.
Okay, I'm good with that.
Councilmember Wook, I'm sorry, Councilmember Storsett.
I'm in favor of it being on two separate lines. I think it's important that each of them be called out because they might be very different in their programming. So, one, if it's in the budget as a center per se, and I'm not aware of what that is. I'll have to go back and look it up. But I think the youth is like yet to be developed, as Brenda, mentioned. And I think it's kind of two different things. We talked about the city council the youth council. I think this is a great thing to partner with them on. So I don't want to make it sound like it's too established yet, that it's something in the works and that we would bring it forward later, but definitely like it called out.
So let's go ahead and add another line that says support funding or funding support for youth activities. How's that?
Tony, it sounds to me like that needs to go on the project side because we.
I agree.
Mhm.
I was just about to say that, Josh, thank you.
Anybody have some language for that they would like to see there?
Well, I had suggested support funding for youth activities. And council, would you be okay if it said youth and teen activities?
Sure.
Okay.
All right, you have made me go on to 2 pages, so you're gonna have to take something off the list here.
You're funny, Josh.
Just make the font really, really small.
Yeah, that goes over well around here. Councilmember Barber.
Well, I may have an answer to Josh's directive. No. So in routine and annual actions, we have funding support for senior center programming. And then in actions and projects, we have funding support to senior center permanent home. Are those not the same thing?
No, the money set aside for the senior center home is so that organization can find a location and then we can contribute to their permanent location if that's what they end up doing in the near future.
Yeah, and I think the intent there is we've been contributing to programming at what, $10,000-$15,000 a year for many years.
Okay,
And
okay,
but we're setting aside a couple big chunks of money to build a building.
okay.
So one we do every year, one we do until they've got enough money to build a building.
Okay, thanks. I thought I solved your problem, Josh.
We appreciate the attempt.
I'll try again.
So the next item on this list is implement and support Sister City program. And I'm going to suggest that we leave that as is for now, because this issue is most likely going to be coming to you for further discussion here shortly. And that will determine to what extent we do this, and just leave it there. And then finally, continue to fund creative endeavors grants. That's directly out of the budget as well. There could be an additional line item on here for other type of arts grant activities, if you like. But this one was very specific to a program that we currently have. And how much is in there, Josh? Isn't it like $50,000?
30,000.
30, okay, thank you. Any further comment on these routine annual actions? So let's move over to the projects. First item is revised municipal code for short-term rentals, something we're doing right now. 2024 comp plan periodic update, that will be coming up. Funding support for the Harbor History Museum Maritime Gallery project. And that's different from the annual 30,000 we give, as you know, as we talked about. Funding support for a senior center permanent home. We are working on an annexation study, review our design manual, housing needs and action plan, create historic preservation committee, review parking requirements for businesses, and support funding for youth and teen centers, as we just added. Before council says anything, the review parking requirements for business can fall either here under maintain small town character or under support and enhance of dynamic and robust economy. So I'm going to throw that out as part of the discussion, and I'll ask Councilmember Henderson next.
Oh, I had something different on that
No,
one.
no, you can talk about whatever you want. I just saw
Okay,
your
all
hand
right,
up.
thank you. So on all these actions, when I go look at the goals and see what actions we have here that are supporting them, the enhanced walkability and pedestrian cyclist safety, what specific project would that be? I mean, do we add another one that says build more sidewalks? Or you might argue it's under the design manual, but I think our design manual is more architectural stuff, right? Not so much walkability, rideability, pedestrian safety. So I'm just wondering if we need to add something here in a project, not again, a sidewalk on X street, just something. Maybe our public works director could help me out on that one.
I would suggest possibly just putting a bulleted item under actions that identifies or references to continuing to follow or add to the active transportation plan or the city's transportation element. Something housing where that, or identifying the location of those projects that are identified to keep it updated and implementation of those projects.
So that's an awful lot for one project.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, that's good. Let me think here.
Well, while you're thinking about that, I'll ask Councilmember Wood for her comments.
Yes, so I understand that the parking requirements for businesses, that's important. It has to do with a number of parking spaces that are needed for businesses. But we've also had some concerned citizens in Gig Harbor North about, and we've had concerned citizens in downtown about parking on side streets. And so if we're going to maintain a small town character and historic preservation, I think we need to look at parking on side streets all over town.
So maybe we just change this to say review parking requirements.
The business is a whole separate thing.
So but when you take 4 businesses off, then you could even say review parking requirements for businesses and subdivisions, for businesses and residential areas,
Could do that.
Off-street parking.
Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure that they're two very different issues, because we're looking at how many parking stalls are required for businesses under the business thing. And under the off-street parking, that's a residential really use in so those are very different actions and goals, I believe, that Director Knudsen, I think, would I mean, that's what we've been talking about with the comp plan. And so I just want to make sure that those are two very different things and we don't lump them together. We know that they're two different requirements.
Can I offer a suggestion?
Yeah,
What if we move review parking requirements for businesses down under support and enhance a dynamic and robust economy? And where we have currently review parking requirements for businesses, we say review off-street parking in residential areas. Off-street parking requirements in residential areas. Does that work, Jenny?
Well, I don't know. I think the businesses, because I think the businesses is really having the parking regarding businesses really also has to do with the small town character. You know,
I think it has to do with both, and that's why I was thinking of separating them by moving.
it
one
does have to do with both, but I think it also has to do with the small town character. So I would go for both, but I wouldn't take it out of small town character.
Councilmember Rodenberg.
Yes, just as a clarification, the funding support for the Harbor History Museum Maritime Gallery project. Certainly the building is the project, but what's in the building is the Shenandoah. So is that the same continued support that we voted on the other night? The 3-year funding?
Josh, that's the way I interpret that. Is that the way you interpret that?
So it's
Yes.
Shenandoah.
Yeah, this is for the Shenandoah, yes. That's
And
what
is
we voted on
this
Monday.
what they call the project, the Maritime Gallery?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so funding support, so cool, we're doing that already. Very good, thanks.
I like putting items on a to-do list that I can check off right away. Councilmember Henderson.
All right, I've been thinking about this one about the walkability, pedestrian, cyclist safety. I think we could add a bullet under actions, routine and annual. That way we don't lose any space. And I kind of sketched out something maybe like review all capital transportation projects for walkability and cyclist safety or something like that along. Now, you may argue, well, we do that anyway, but I'd like a little bit more emphasis on walkability and pedestrian cyclist safety.
There's nothing wrong with including things that you already do in a plan like this to make sure that we don't lose sight of it and it maintains a higher level of priority.
I like that. Thank you.
And pedestrian safety, or was it cyclist safety? Okay. Councilor Likens.
Yeah, thanks. So I was just looking, this is just a clarifying question on the housing needs and action plan. Is that addressing the goal of ensuring adequate, affordable housing? Because I don't see other things on here that address that goal.
That's exactly what I think it means.
Okay, great. Okay, just wanted to clarify. Thanks.
Jeff.
I was going to follow up from what Councilmember Henderson was adding there, but under the actions for projects, if it was appropriate to say something like implement pedestrian/bicycle projects consistent with the adopted transportation element.
I think that says the same thing as what we just put up here.
Okay.
That sounds like a routine thing we should always be doing.
Well, mine was to implement, but yes,
Right.
review.
you like that wording better, Councilmember Henderson?
Oh, review and implement or implement projects for walkability pedestrian?
Repeat what you just said, Jeff.
I said implement pedestrian and bicycle projects consistent with the adopted transportation element.
I'm assuming then that the adopted transportation element would enhance our walkability, pedestrian, cyclist safety.
Well, yeah, there are chapters both within the active transportation plan and the motorized transportation plan that talk about where we're lacking in bicycle pedestrian safety areas and where we need to enhance those.
Okay. So we could do that in lieu of.
Josh, go ahead and Jeff, if you would slowly say that again for Josh.
Implement pedestrian and bicycle projects consistent with the adopted transportation element.
And that transportation element should be capitalized, Josh, because it's the transportation element in the comp plan. And then we can remove the bullet above it.
Yeah.
Okay. Still thinking about that review parking requirements item. Councilmember Watt was advocating for having two separate items. Council.
I'm all right with that. I'm all right with that.
You're okay with that? Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, anything else to add to this section? All right, moving on, priorities. Promote environmental sustainability and preserve Gig Harbor's natural beauty. So the goal is to address climate change, preserve tree canopy, preserve natural character, and add undeveloped lands to parks inventory. Are there other goals that we could have in there? Those are, particularly that first one is a pretty big one. Councilmember Henderson.
Thanks. I was thinking maybe preserve and enhance natural character as well.
Okay.
That way we don't slide back.
Okay. Councilmember Danson.
Should we look at what other communities are doing in terms of building standards around this issue? Like I know Pierce County is requiring new construction to have an EV outlet in each home. It's a very small cost for the builders. There's some small things like that we might look to other communities for.
I think that what you're describing supports this priority. From my mind, the question is, where does it belong? Councilmember Storsett.
Yeah, just on the first bullet there, the address climate change. I think that's, obviously that's a big one, right? That can mean a lot of things. And so I'm interested, definitely not to skip ahead, but what type of ideas come from council on actions and annual, which is like, how are we looking at this going forward? Because there is a lot of actions and projects involved. So I think that's something I'm curious, as Robin mentioned, like back to like what other cities are doing. I know there's a few other, well, there's probably many, but I've read about a few cities of adopting this and taking a look at what they're doing, but I am interested to hear more from council.
Councilmember Walker.
So I think probably looking at other cities probably will come into the Adopt Climate and Sustainability Action Plan, because I don't think we'll be just doing it on our own. There's a lot of, as you said, Seth, there's a lot of good ideas out there. And so I think that's what that would go under. And I think that probably the housing and the electric charging station probably would come under that as well, because those are actions really. I mean, I don't have a problem with if you want to put it under a goal, but it would seem to me that that's more of an action thing. So,
And not only that, Councilmember Wood, but when you look at some of the other items that are in the actions projects, forming climate action committee, adopt an urban forest management plan. I mean, a lot of those you could argue belong under an adopt a climate and sustainability action plan, because all those items will be part of that plan.
right. Right. And this is the first time the city has ever done this. So I don't think we exactly know what our annual items would be.
That's why Josh and I had a hard time filling out that particular part of the matrix.
I suspect when we bring this back next year to revise that we'll have several things to put in there.
Yes, I think so.
I agree with that. Councilmember Likens.
Yeah, I was going to address that point as well. I was thinking something along the lines of adopt and review climate and sustainability action plan, that we build in some type of annual review or, you know, biannual, or somehow that'll be part of those routine and annual things that we do, and important. So thanks.
If you want to really highlight that, what we could do is under the routine annual, put a dot point in that says annually or biannually review climate sustainability action plan.
Yep.
Once developed and implemented.
Yeah, because the science is, it could change, there could be, you know, updates, issues. Yeah, that'd be great.
Sure.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rodenberg.
Yeah, I think this might be just repetitive, but when we address climate change, I think addressing climate change is different than adopting climate sustainability plan. If Council Member Denson's comment was by looking at other cities, and I think Council Member Storsett said the same thing, that just means we're going to look, how do they address them? It may be the way they address them is adopt the climate sustainability plan. But I think just addressing them, how do they address them to begin with? So I don't think we can keep from saying review and look at how other municipalities handle the same situation. That should be key. Not that we necessarily need to follow it. We can certainly improve, or we can certainly throw things out, but that's how we get educated, is by looking how other people do things.
Agreed. So let's go ahead and edit that one, Josh. So it says, it looks like all the rest. Thank you. So you can see when you look at this list, there's a lot of items in here that we'll already have programmed in to do over the next year to 2 years. Looks like a pretty comprehensive list. And I think once the action plan itself is adopted, most of these will be in there with a few others. Councilmember Henderson.
Yeah, I'm thinking on the projects side, the projects action side, I want to add, potentially suggest adding a couple, but we can combine two. The adopt urban forest management plan. I think you could take the update tree retention policies and
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I think those can be combined into one line. They are different. One could happen a lot sooner than the other, for sure. And then under actions, the culvert fish barrier replacement projects. I don't know if that, I mean, those are projects. I don't know where those would be falling in there. And then probably the other thing I wanted to bring up is maybe transitioning or some sort of transition to electrify the city fleet.
I think you're also now getting back into all the various sub-actions that we're going to see in the
It's
climate sustainability action plan.
Entirely possible, yeah.
Yeah. Anything further? All right, let's move down to our last item. Priority goal 5, support and enhance a dynamic and robust economy. Develop a plan to increase support to our local businesses, business community, increase vitality of downtown business districts, small businesses, and attract larger businesses to our industrial zone and maintain and enhance commercial fishing. Our annual activities for that are support Downtown Waterfront Alliance and the Chamber of Commerce and promote tourism-related activities through lodging tax grants. Anything or any comments on both of those sections? Councilmember Henderson.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, your hand's up. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Councilmember Rodenberg.
Yeah, I just think the word support is so often misunderstood as financial support. So we're not, in my opinion, we're not going to be financially supporting our local businesses. Maybe there's something we can put in there, a word someone else can think of that is what kind of supports, increase what support, just to keep it from being misunderstood as financial support. Because, you know, as you know, we're getting asked for financial support from businesses every time we put up a road closed sign.
Councilmember Barber.
I would like to suggest, and I know we talked about this and went around on it during the retreat, but the second bullet that we could edit it, again, trying to be sensitive to all the businesses in the city, to say increase vitality of the city's small businesses, so that we are removing the emphasis on the downtown business district.
Council, that sounds like a good edit. And I want to get back to Councilman Rodenberg's comment here as soon as we can, because I agree that the word support can be very much misinterpreted sometimes. Councilmember Barber, do you have anything else?
No, I'm trying to think of something on that one though, too.
Maybe Councilmember Henderson does, his hand's up.
Yeah, I was trying to link that with maybe streamlining permitting for small businesses to open up. I kind of know our permitting process tends to favor larger businesses that understand how we do our work, that can afford that kind of stuff. So we tend to exclude small mom and pops trying to open up because they've got such a burden. And that's the kind of support to our local businesses that I would certainly like to see is some. But so I understand what Councilmember Rodenberg is saying about the word support can often be linked to financial
Grants, monies, dollars.
yeah.
And in response to your comment about permitting, it's up in the second item, ensure sustainable future for public services, as the third bullet point under annual, continue implementing permit and land use approval process improvements. And I thought there was something else in here that talked about reviewing our fees. Yeah, right there at the bottom, about to evaluate and amend if necessary development fees.
Okay. Development, though, that's slightly different than a mom and pop wanting to open up a new restaurant in North Gig Harbor, right? Or are they one and the same?
Kind of. Yeah, we could amend that to say evaluate and amend if necessary development regulations and fees.
Yeah.
Councilmember Rodenberg.
Yeah, I think the wording downtown waterfront needs to be in there somewhere because that is a separate issue. It's no doubt that the downtown, the quaintness of downtown is what brought people to this community. And I don't mind having other businesses in there, but downtown is specific because there's been comments that it's going away. It's not, we're not supporting them enough. And that's what draws our tourists. So helping the downtown businesses is specifically important, as well as all businesses, but I think we ought to call it out.
So you think that would go underneath a goal?
Yes.
Well, it's right there under action.
Yeah, we do have support the Downtown Waterfront Alliance and Chamber of Commerce. I think what Councilmember Rodenberg is alluding to here is that it's more than just that when it comes to the downtown area itself. Am I characterizing your comments correctly, Councilmember Rodenberg?
Yes, you are.
Thank you. Josh, why don't you put a placeholder in there that just says something along the lines of downtown business goal, and let's all just think about what that might look like. Because this is going to be coming back. You're going to have to formally adopt it. We're going to make, and maybe we can figure something out before then, because my brain isn't quite putting the words together that will work there. Jeff.
Going back to Councilor Rodenberg's comment on the first bullet under the goals, maybe develop a plan to increase the promotion of our local business community.
I like that.
Mhm.
I actually like that too, and I would use promote over in the priority as well.
That's good.
Okay. Under the annual activities, we have the two items: support Downtown Waterfront Alliance and Chamber, promote tourism related activities through lodging tax grants. I'm going to use the support word again, but would there be something along the lines that would be to support all of the annual festivals and activities? And I know that we give our LTAC grants to quite a few of those, but there's a few others that don't get any grants, but they certainly could get some sort of help from the city, even if it's just we make sure that we put a note about them on our website or even in our brochures. I don't know, just they can come to a council meeting and say, hey, come to our event, all that kind of stuff. So what do you think?
What if what we said was support downtown businesses and events to help bring visitors to the city?
Yeah, I like that.
Tony, can you see the hands raised? Can you see everybody's hands?
Yep, I can.
Okay.
So while Josh is writing that, Councilmember Denson.
Yes, I'm not sure if this is an annual action or a project, but we had discussed creating some sort of an educational program for potential businesses interested in doing business in Gig Harbor in collaboration with the Chamber and Waterfront Alliance, some sort of a once a year seminar.
Right. We talked about that. It's very much like conducting the HOA fair.
Yes.
So I would say something along the lines of, yeah, develop and implement call it small business fair. How's that?
Yeah, it's like a new even pre-new, it's before they even get started, what it takes to do business. But yeah, something like that. So thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Likens.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Robin, for bringing that up, because I also had that on my list to bring up, was that annual business fair. But also going back to several comments about the word support, I just jotted down promote collaborative partnerships with the Downtown Waterfront Alliance, or promote positive relationships, or something along, something about we're going to partner and collaborate and work with them. So just a thought.
We actually do support the Downtown Waterfront. We give them monies each year.
Okay.
Councilmember Rodenberg.
Yeah, I think one of the annual and routine things that belongs there under routine and annual is the continuation of the trolley system that we do collaboratively with Pierce County Transit. That's big in the summer, gets a lot of usage, and we subsidize that somewhat. So I think it belongs on here.
I agree. So continue collaboration with Pierce County Transit, with Pierce Transit on downtown trolley.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson.
Not to put anybody on the spot, but I was wondering if we might be able to hear from our communications and tourism director, Pettit, on any of our ideas here, or if she's.
She hasn't raised her hand. I didn't call on her. So Laura, raise your hand, say something.
Oh, okay, hold on. Hand raised. I think acknowledging that tourism is a big part of our economic development output is a big thing. Robin, the idea of the educational program with both the Chamber and the Downtown Waterfront Alliance is something that I'm very much a fan of. I think ongoing, creating an educational system for our existing businesses too, on what they can do within a marketing scope and how they can take advantage of the services within the tourism and communications department is a great idea, in order to make sure that they're leveraging what we have appropriately and using this office as a megaphone for what they're doing. So I think that's a big part of what I would love to see as just an extrapolation of that. Other than that, I think our continued media relations also affect things that are economic development issues for the city too. So, all of that kind of crosses over. But yes, I think gathering the information is one of the more difficult parts, and making sure that people know that they can submit to our office and utilize those services are part of what we're looking to do, especially as we get out in the community at least 2 days a month to meet, greet, and find out what's going on.
Thank you. Councilmember Storsett.
Yeah, Roger, thanks for putting Laura on the spot. I'm thinking the same.
Well, that's always fun to do. Come on.
I was going to do it a little bit less directly. I was going to start, just mentioning about the LTAC and, follow on that. We've had 2 meetings and a lot of great progress with that group. I definitely think it would be valuable for the rest of the council to hear at some point in one of our study sessions, give an overview where the money's going, how effective it is. And I think there's many bullets that Laura could add on to these type of things of, what are we actually doing and how it's working. So that's all I had to add. So Roger, thank you. I love that. And Laura, thanks for being ready. Right.
Sorry, Laura.
That's okay. If I could add on to that just a moment too. I think that one of our biggest points has been just measurement of the effectiveness of what we're doing too. So to capitalize on what Seth is saying there, making sure that our funds are enacting the right growth in our community.
I love the idea of having Laura, Councilmember Storsett, and LTAC come to a study session and just talk about everything they're doing, look at some of the metrics and the activities. Quite frankly, council members, I think you'd be shocked. There's a lot going on. Councilmember Rodenberg.
I hate to put Laura on the spot, but I didn't know that she was on the call. I apologize. We just unloaded a whole lot of work on her as far as the citizens concern form, satisfaction survey, the communications plan, all those sorts of things. I can see her requesting another FTE or a half FTE. I mean, it just seemed like a ton more work. So she was listening to all that and I didn't hear a comment. So I would like to.
Sure. Not just yet, but thank you for the intro to that. I think what that would be based on is what our communication strategy plan looks like. If we want to build in external or more responsibilities for this department, which I think we have the opportunity to, then we go from there and we take a look at what's necessary and what time allocations we think are feasible within each one of those initiatives that we propose. You know, there's only a certain number of hours in a day on the communication side and the tourism side. And right now this department is equally funded by 50% in each way. So we do have to take a careful look at how much time and effort goes into each initiative and what we're doing. But yes, and something that Tony has been instrumental in too is saying, yes, we need a communication strategy plan, which I 100% agree with, just to develop that framework. As we start to look into some of the citizen stuff and the citizen complaint things and some of those, there are software tools that we can utilize to lessen the amount of time, staff time that takes. We've been looking into that really intensely for probably a year or so. Just trying to make the right recommendations to council on how we do that and the best way to do it. So maybe that's a maybe, I guess, in a roundabout way.
Yep.
Sorry, too soon, roundabout way.
Cow.
I'm so sorry. Anyhow, yeah, it depends. So I think our first step is the communication strategy plan, and then we.
Thank you, Laura.
Yep. And I think the good news for Laura is we have finally hired her assistant. If you haven't met Jenica yet, swing by. Her cubicle is right across the hall from the mayor's office, and she's a dynamo.
She's a wonderful addition.
She's a great addition, and I think she's going to really help us with a big chunk of what we're talking about here. Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you. I always support additional staff if it's needed, which is always good. But one thing I was going to have add, we mentioned it on the annual goals or annual projects, was the metrics and looking at how the money is, how well the money is being. I think it was mentioned, but I didn't see it in here. That's something we do annually is. How's our LTAC affecting us? Is it as good as it should be?
So Roger, I can answer that quickly too. That's one of the reasons we brought on our geofencing software to measure the amount of time over a specific polygon. So let's say we have a polygon over and we can go, we'll keep this very high level for right now, but we can see who is both staying at a hotel and attending an event. So we can see that number of metrics that we have for attracting people from more than 50 miles away, which is where my JLARC reporting, which is due shortly here, also requires us to report upon. But having those data sources rather than just self-reporting gives us a really accurate idea of what is truly driving tourism and where we need to direct our efforts and where we may, things are always valid, but they can also have a local audience more so than an external one. So,
right.
So that would be one of our annual goals that we could put down on this list.
We could put something down along the lines of annually evaluate effectiveness, LTAC, or tourism and LTAC activities.
That's good.
Yep.
So
There you go, putting something on the list that we already do. So you cross it off already.
I told you, Councilmember Roadberg, I love doing that and I can cross it off. Councilmember Barber.
One of the things that I would like to make sure is on this list is, as part of the annual routine and annual things that Laura does every year, is the visitor guide that is produced annually that supports our local businesses and our visitors, and also the media relations program around that's targeted to potential visitors.
So I'm happy to put those both on. So we have three we want to add right now. So the first one is, yeah, go ahead, produce the annual visitors guide. And then annually evaluate effectiveness of tourism promotion.
We can even say, we can make that specific to the grant program, or we can make that specific to.
We've already, yeah, I think it should be the whole thing. Tourism promotion and what was the other one? Oh, LTAC activities. And Councilmember Barber, could you describe the second one you threw out there just a moment ago again?
The second one was around tourism, visitor-oriented, continue supporting visitor-oriented media relations effort. How's that, Laura?
Sorry, go again with that, Mary.
Continue supporting visitor-oriented media relations.
Cool. All right. I don't know, Josh, I have no idea how you're gonna get this all on one page. Councilman Storsett.
Change the font. That's not why I raised my hand, no. So one thing oftentimes I have a question more than I have an answer or a solution. So I'm going to kind of put this one back out there too, but this seems very heavily geared towards tourism and bringing people in from, outside of Gig Harbor, whether it's Greater Gig Harbor. But I would be, obviously, like, I think locals pick up, the annual guide, even though we live here, right? We like to be tourists in our own town. But Laura, I guess I could put it back on you or anyone else on the call of, what about addressing, our direct citizens, and how are they hearing about all these great things?
I can hop in quickly on that. So part of our tourism campaign is also to become, we always think that our citizens are our best publicists. So we'd like to get that information out to them on the attractions that are here in Gig Harbor. The other part of that would fall on the communications side. So there's a deeper amount of information you want when you're a resident beyond what to do, where to get a cocktail, and where to spend the night, and what parks are great to go to. That communication strategy portion, and under the communication strategy plan, would specifically address how people can get involved, how they can find out what's going on, how they can find out about city activities, and where they can get involved. The other part of that is that we do see an incredible amount of day traffic into the city of Gig Harbor, whether that be from, our UGA or surrounding growth neighborhoods, whether it be Port Orchard or Tacoma or whatever we have. So that day traffic, while it doesn't raise our lodging tax, it does have a really strong impact on sales tax revenues. And that is something that benefits, a good amount of our community as well. So local, and by local, I mean city residents, surrounding area, regional, people who are coming in for the day or coming in on their boat, things like that. Those are all stratifications of that communications effort. So yes, essentially. Our citizens are important both for being megaphones for what we're doing and attracting people in, as well as being engaged and involved and understanding the background behind projects. So no one's surprised, and everyone has a decent amount of positive perception of city planning and events and happenings. So. Any clarification needed, let me know.
Okay. And Councilmember Storsett, I get where you're coming from. I would argue, and maybe that's not right the word, I would say that everything that we do to promote and bring visitors to town, help the small businesses bring visitors to town, helps create a business community that our citizens, our residents can go to and enjoy. They're not mutually exclusive, I think is a good way to put it. And I like what Laura just said. And quite frankly, the annual visitors guide, Laura, do we mail that to every address in town?
We are starting that this year, and that's part of our taking all of that internally is to raise the funds through advertising and sponsorships in order to underwrite that cost.
Good.
All right, thank you. And I'm sorry, I had to shut my video off there for a second. Kids
No
came
worries.
home from school, and it sounds like a rough day at school. So apologies, but I think I caught the gist of that, and I really put it out there as a question. I think I understand the difference between the two, and I'm glad we're mailing them out. That's great, because I always feel like when I take one from the bottom of Finholm stairs, I'm taking it from somebody else. So thank you.
Yeah, and again, we want to make sure that these reach people so that they can plan and invite people to town and hit people before they're in Gig Harbor so that they can plan a trip to Gig Harbor.
Right. So, council, have we got this in good enough form that we can adopt it and then have staff take the next step, which is all these, particularly these actions and projects, and start putting together work plans for the next 2 years as to how we're going to accomplish these? And seeing heads going up and down and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of work to do here. However, I think you've really laid out a fantastic roadmap and a very logically thought through roadmap of how you're going to accomplish your priorities. And I'll tell you right now, you're not going to get all of these done in 2 years, but I think you're going to see a lot of good work done on the ones that are going to make the biggest impact. And yeah, this is fantastic. This is one of the best planning sessions that I have been through in my career. Thank you. Councilmember Storsett.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a very valuable document, as we track our progress through this year and, setting our goals again for next year. I think it's going to really help us at the retreat, especially, having that vision that cascades on. And I want to thank Tony for facilitating this, and especially Josh for tracking all of our ideas and changes, because that is, I don't know. I could not keep up the way you did. I'd have spelling mistakes everywhere and just tell everybody I'd come back to it. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Jensen.
Yeah, I'll echo what Seth said. I think this was as efficient and effective as it was because of our wonderful Josh. So thank you, Josh. You gave us an incredible place to start from that just needed some tweaks, and you are awesome.
No problem. I do have a couple of questions though before we wrap this up. We have the vision statement at the top of this, and if we're adopting this, we should adopt the vision statement at the same time. So I want to make sure everyone is okay with what we came out of the retreat with.
Thank you for pointing that out.
And then one suggestion that I might have too is the priorities that we have, they're not really ranked in any order, but it might be helpful to assign a number to each one. The reason why I'd suggest this is one thing that I've done in the past is we can actually put on our agenda bills that come to you in your packet. We can put on there a number that references where each agenda item addresses your strategic plan.
And this is not meant to say it's a priority 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's meant to say that it just so we can identify it when we bring things to you.
Yeah. And then the other part of that too is what I've done in the past with another city is we include this in every single council packet that goes out. So when it's posted on the website, it's there for the public along with your schedule of upcoming meetings. So it's always there in the forefront. Council has it so they can remember what they've committed themselves to, and the public can see what our plan is. So that's part of my incentive for getting it on one page. But if we're on 2 pages, that's fine too.
Okay. Councilmember Henderson. Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor, go ahead.
Oh,
I'm going
that's
to turn
okay.
I'm going to turn the meeting back over to you, Mayor. Thank you for letting me take control.
Sorry for the confusion. I didn't know where we were going. So Councilmember Henderson.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think our vision statement is good. I know that we worked it out, and it seems to encompass pretty much everything that we've been going along with today. I recommend we don't play around with it. To Josh's suggestion about putting a number, I'll go for that. with the understanding that it doesn't mean, well, we got to get number 1 done first before we get number 2 done, and number 2 done before we get number 3 done. Priority for a lot of people, though, especially if the public is looking this, they may say, well, why are you working on priority 5 or 4 or 3 when you've got priority 1 here? So I don't mind putting any kind of a number there. I just don't want it to put us in a corner and say, well, we can't work on developing and implement a small business fair because it falls down here on priority number 5. So anyway, that I just caution that.
What about a letter? Would a letter be like ABCD?
I was thinking the same thing. It still has that feel that Councilmember Henderson's saying, but not as much.
Yeah. Councilmember Wook?
Yes, I support the letter idea as well. And do we need to go over any of this with any, Director Langham is here, but do we need to go over this with Community Director Knudsen as well before we assign any numbers, especially, or even letters?
I don't think so. She saw this, she contributed to it. She was part of the retreat. So I think she's going to be comfortable with what we've done here today.
Then I'm much more in favor of letters than numbers.
Okay,
It's a perception to our citizens.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what Interim City Administrator Pisecki said was, it's not a priority, it's an identifying number or an identifying letter. So I'm good with the letters. And maybe we could call it identification letter or something, just so people don't think it's a priority list. It's the jobs to be done, and and we do them when we do them.
And I may be able to just adjust the agenda, Bill, so we can call out each of these priorities by their actual title and just not even bother with a reference number. I think the titles are short enough. We can just put right on there the full name of the priority. That may be easier and less confusing.
Okay.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Councilmember Wook?
No, that's fine.
Oh,
All right.
and you're all good
Good.
with adding this to the agenda each time? Everybody good with that? Okay.
We should be able to have a resolution for the March 28th meeting, because this is pretty much ready to go. So
Thank you again, Josh, and thank you to Tony for facilitating this. This is so productive. This council is so productive. I love it. I love it. And our staff is amazing, of course, as always. So thank you all for your efforts. It's 3:55. Let's take a quick 5-minute break and come back at 4 o'clock. Sound good? Okay. I'd like to welcome you all back to the Gig Harbor City Council study session of Thursday, March 17th, 2022. The time is 4 p.m. And we will move on to our next item, which is policy for plaques. And I will turn this over to our interim city administrator, Tony Pisecki.
Thank you, Your Honor. This question was brought to staff from Councilmember Wook when an attempt was made last fall to place a plaque at a park in the city. And she rightly asked, what is the standards that we have? What do we do? What should we do? So what I'd like to do, Councilmember Wook, if I may put you on the spot, is ask you to start the conversation out by expressing your thoughts with regards to what a plaque policy should look like in general terms.
So for me, I believe that we're elected officials and we represent the citizens of Gig Harbor. And so I'm not in favor of having any elected officials' names appear on any plaques of any parks, because there will be another election and another council to put something else in that park. And lo and behold, pretty soon you're going to have so many names you may not see the park. So that's my concern. And I think it's important that we actually have a policy and my concern is that it's the citizens really who we represent and who elect all of us. And so my concern, I think we all know that as interim city administrator Piasecki said that someone was going to place an item in the park without any conversation at all. And so we need to have a policy. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to start out my part of this conversation by saying that as far as I know, most cities don't have a written policy per se as to how plaques are done. Because generally, from what I've seen, and when you're a city manager, city administrator geek, you pay attention to things like, oh, what kind of water meters do they have on the ground? Well, I also look at the plaques that I see wherever I go, and they generally fall into the following, call it structure. The top of the plaque will have the name of the project. And then next, you'll see the elected officials who were in office at the time the project was dedicated. And I say that very deliberately because, as you well know, you could start a project in year one, Council X approves it in year one, but it isn't complete and ready to be used until year 3. And most of that council could be gone. So the ridiculousness would be, all right, well, let's list every council member who ever voted on any item having to do with this project. Then your plaque's going to get huge. So council member, the electeds who made the decision, and this is a little egotistical, city manager, city administrator at the time. I've seen plaques that include the name of the department director for the project. So if it's a park project or a public works project or whatever project, the director's name is on there. The design firm, engineering firm, your construction, your main general contractor, and then your design partners. I'm sorry, your funding partners. And that's it. The plaques can be very large depending on where they go. They can be very small. Generally, they're made of bronze with raised letters. Very, very typical. I've seen some where it's just the name of the project and when it was dedicated, and that's it. There are, and I'll conclude with this. There are some of our funding partners that require some sort of public recognition, be it a plaque that we put their name on, or they even have their own plaques that say, no, we're going to put our own plaque up next to the one you're going to put up because we have our own special style, color, logo, and all that. We want ours on there. So with that said, I'd really like council's thoughts as to what we should or shouldn't do, and we'll go from there.
Councilmember Rodenberg.
Yeah, I have no issue with plaques in the way that Tony Piasecki, interim city administrator Piasecki, described them. I know that RCO requires you to have a plaque and you have to have it up for a certain amount of time. They, at least in the grants I've gotten from them for my projects at the club, we've never had to use theirs unless we just wanted to. I know that the NRA does the same thing if you get funding from them. I just don't think that we should probably have a policy just to keep some self-serving elected official from deciding to do it and going to somebody at Public Works and having them create it. So I think a policy is prudent, but I don't think we should eliminate them altogether. Let's face it, I think we should all take pride in what we do. And, 20 years from now, when somebody comes to the sports complex, I think it would be nice if they saw that, hey, this is so-and-so's great grandfather did this on a historical basis. So I'm in favor of plaques and a policy.
Councilmember Storsett.
Yes, thank you. I agree with the comments from both council members, Luke and Rodenberg. I have no desire to have my name on a plaque. I think it is strange as often as, these rules can change. And as awesome as I think it would be to take my kids to some park, I don't need to show them my name to tell them, that I was in support of something. And I think it's more important, as Jenny said, that it's all the citizens. This is what they wanted, and that should be recognized. I also like, Tony made some comments as well regarding some of these things as sponsorships. We also have land recognition, pieces that I think are very appropriate, like we've done at Austin Park. And so I really like those things. I think take an example of the new purchase, hopefully that we're taking with off of Burnham, that, that family is, been, I think, very, that their goal or their mission was they love the idea of preserving that and giving it to the city in a way. Of course, we're purchasing it, but I think that could be recognized. And maybe they have no desire. I think some of these things we could have a policy, but I think you have to look at them on a case by case. And of course, policies can be amended and future, leaders may decide to change this, but I think this sets a good precedent for how the city operates. Thanks.
Any other council comments? Okay, so what direction are you looking for exactly, Tony, from council?
In general, two things, and they're pretty, one's really, really specific. Do you want a policy or not? And I'm hearing yes. The next question is, what do you want it to say? So what I've heard so far is two options. One, that if we do plaques, that they be very high level, that they simply say, here's the name of the project, here's when it was dedicated, and here is major funding partners and donation groups, whatever, and it doesn't talk about who the electeds were, who the appointed officials were, or anything like that. The second option is the one I kind of described, which is typical with elected officials, chief appointed officials, and then your construction and design firms noted on there. And of course, funding partners.
Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Has anybody ever put a QR code on a thing like that so that you could keep it at a high level? Then you go to the QR code, you can get a list of everybody that ever touched the thing.
That is that's a new one on me, council member. I honestly don't know how QR codes work.
Laura,
I know that when I scan, I know that part, but when I
Laura's like, I know.
That goes to a website that grabs some information and gives it to me. So you always have to make sure that website and that information is available.
Yeah, true.
You also have to be very cautious in what you generate the QR code with, whether you use a service that's paid and whether you continue to pay that service. So
Okay.
just making sure that it may be better to just put our city website on there and then have a search forum or something along those lines. But to that point as well, and the only thing I will say from a communication standpoint is that plaques can be helpful in reminding people what your city does and what your city council members do for you, and what your tax funds go toward. So sometimes people need a reminder that we do good things.
Thanks, Laura. Councilmember Wook.
I'm more in favor of the high level one. And if we're going to have a plaque, to keep it at the high level. And if somebody requires their name on it for funding, I think that's all right. But as far as I'm not in favor of electeds being on there. That's my opinion.
So show of hands, support for the high level plaque option. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
That's direction, Your Honor.
Okay. And then, so would you and Josh kind of craft a policy around maybe some kind of a form that might be, filled out when someone's requesting a plaque, or like or naming what you said, if someone requires a plaque, then here's how that would work. And
so I'm looking at this as plaques for city initiated type projects only. So I don't want someone who says, hey, I want to go put a plaque on X or Y. For example, on the Bogue Visitor Center viewing platform, there's a plaque there that dedicated that to the memory of, I can't remember her first name, Ms. Bogue. If someone wants to come and do something very special for a very special person who is important to the community's history, to the community's development and all that, then that's something I think we can consider and bring to the council ad hoc.
I would agree with that.
This policy is only about when we finish a project and put a little plaque on it to let people know what it is, be it, you know, the Communities Paddlers dock that we just finished is a really good example.
Yeah. Councilmember Likens.
Oh, I think Director Piasecki just, or excuse me, Interim City Administrator.
I answer to
Piasecki.
anything.
Okay.
Just say ICA Piasecki.
Addressed, because I was just thinking if you explicitly prohibit names, if there's something in memoriam, something like that, and that person happened to be on council or something, that there be a way to take it to council. That's all I was going to say. So I completely agree. So, thanks.
Councilmember Rodenberg.
I guess this is a question for Public Works Director Jeff Langhelm. Was that concrete obelisk that was sent to that park in order to mount a plaque, was that ever returned to where it should have been?
Not yet. We have left it there until hearing council's direction.
I think we can all decide right now that it ought to be removed back to where it originated.
Well, it'll probably be taken up to the Public Works shop for now because we don't have a plaque to put on it, and it only is associated. I mean, it was supposed to be put in the landfill when it was excavated from Donkey Creek daylighting project. So, yeah, we'll move it from the park.
You had your hand up, right, Director Langhelm?
I did. I had one more thing to add. It's just timely for the plaque that we're going to be putting up at Community Paddlers Dock. As City Administrator Piasecki mentioned, sometimes we have to put plaques up to acknowledge funding partners. In this case, we do need to put one up for acknowledgement of the Port of Tacoma and their funds that they provided for their Community Paddlers Dock. I was going to then go ahead and take a summary from what I've heard, and we'll put up a plaque dedicating the project, the year, and the funding sources.
Yep, perfect.
Yeah.
Exactly what we heard the council wants.
Okay, we'll do that starting for Community Paddlers Dock. We might not have it in time for the ribbon cutting, but I'll talk about that in the next agenda item.
Okay. All right, thank you, Your Honor. I think we have our direction. Thank you.
I think so too. Okay, so speaking of the next agenda item, I will turn that over to our Public Works Director, Jeff Langhelm, to talk about our 2022 active CIP schedule update.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, before I start in here, I just want to make sure that you saw on the active CIP schedule is distributed, there were some lines that were highlighted. Just as a reminder from when I made the presentation on our first CIP update schedule at the study session in February, that the highlighted items are those items that have had date changes or are added to the list, moving from inactive to active. So if we don't put both dates on there, what it was and what it is. So, but that's where if you want to quickly glance and see what's changed, that'll show you what has changed. Okay, so I'm going to start sharing my screen, and because I have the active CIP project schedule up, and just go through them quickly like I did last time. Hopefully you can see my screen. Starting with the Scansy net shed structural repairs. We did receive approval at the council meeting on Monday, the 14th, to initiate the design contract. So we're going to be now working on that and getting ready for completing the design, going through the building permit process, and having it ready to award at the June 10th council meeting. Sports complex phase 1B, that design and permitting we've been working on the consultant services contract, professional services contract. We hope to have that to you at the March 28th council meeting. Storage racks at Antage Waterfront Park, that's continuing to proceed. We were under contract for the manufacturing of the racks. We've completed the application process for the public to apply. We have received 77 applications, and we are anticipating that we're going to have about 40 spaces available. So Josh did help us. We did a lottery process, so we have those organized through the lottery process. We're now taking the next steps to verify about how many slots we have. We're also going to have a wait list on that. So it was a surprise to me, maybe not to everybody, but most of those 77 applicants were people wanting to store their kayaks, not paddleboards, not canoes. I don't think we had one canoe, but almost all of them were kayaks, and there were just a few paddleboards. So we're going to go through that process. We're going to hopefully start notifying people who was successful, possibly as early as next week, and then have them review the agreements, sign the agreements, pay their fees, and the storage racks are supposed to be delivered in early April, and then the operations crew is going to be assembling those. And we hope before the end of April, we'll be able to start letting people in and store their kayaks and stand-up paddleboards inside the building. Community paddlers dock. So this is one that I have some updates on. If you've driven past there today, you might have seen that the community paddlers dock is open now to the public. Late yesterday afternoon, we received a certificate of occupancy from our building department, and we removed the barricade. George went out there and removed the barricades last night before he went home, and so it is now open and available. There is a little bit more work that needs to be done. The contractor still is going to be out there probably tomorrow to install a photo eye so that the lights on the gangway and the bollard will turn on via photo eye. They were set up to turn on in a different manner associated with the building, and that got complex. So we just said, okay, let's just turn it on with the on and off with a photo eye. The pile caps that go on top of each of the pile, they're cone shaped, typically white. Those are not yet put on. The contractor is going to come back out there and put those on. They don't need the barge for that. The barge is leaving probably tomorrow though. But we anticipate the cone shaped pile caps to be on possibly as early as next week. And then lastly, this is a longer lead item. We recognized as we were completing the project that there's likely could be a security issue between the community paddlers dock, which is open to the public, and the adjacent Lucas Landing dock. That the space between those two docks is now just a few feet. Previously, there wasn't an issue because both floats were accessed only by those people who had a combination or a key. But now that there's going to be general public on the community paddlers dock, we realize that we are going to need to put some sort of security fence down there. So our contractor has just received a field order today to proceed with extending the fencing that's around the gate, turning the corner and coming down the first most waterward section of float. So we're going to get that up. That probably won't be installed though until sometime in April. As a side note, we're also trying to get a set of rules for the community paddlers dock out and posted soon. We might put a temporary plastic sign out there like what you've seen around town for our temporary signs, and then put a final permanent sign out there later and mount it to the fence that will be installed. And then lastly, on the community paddlers dock, we are working with Laura to finalize a date on the ribbon cutting. So it's getting close, though there are some hiccups in scheduling it. Oh, Laura has her hand. Yes.
It looks like it'll be Saturday, April 2nd at 1 p.m. The invite will be out to all associated parties either tomorrow or Monday. So we've been coordinating with all parties to make sure that everyone's able to attend.
Okay, great. Look forward to hearing about that. Okay, so that's community paddlers dock. Any questions so far? Okay. Commercial fishing home port design. Yeah, that's proceeding. We have received, we're about ready to receive 30% design plans for that project. We're going to receive those. We're going to have a conversation with commercial fishing operators in April before we tell the consultant to proceed on to 60% design. When we receive 30% design, we're going to be then submitting land use permits. And so that'll go to local, state, and federal permits so we can get the clock ticking on their reviews. There's going to be included in that an anticipated listing of how much mitigation we're going to need. I've alluded to it a little bit in the past, but it is definitely looking like we're going to need to obtain additional mitigation for the additional overwater coverage for the commercial fishing home port floats, because the new floats are going to be larger than the Jerkovich Pier that we've reserved for overwater coverage mitigation. I do have word from our consultant that the National Marine Fisheries and State Fish and Wildlife does not consider creosote pile to be overwater coverage. So you can't say that you've got a bunch of creosote pile to remove and that will mitigate for future overwater coverage. We have to find overwater coverage that exists today and have that removed in some way, shape, or form. So we're still working on that. Okay, I'm going to continue here. Electric vehicle charging stations. We're proceeding with that. We have received the actual posts for the electric vehicle charging stations. We're now working to get the electricity from Grandview Street up to the parking lot area where we're going to put these charging stations, that is on the east side, the Grandview Forest side of the Civic Center. The initial intention of this is to have these charging stations be available primarily for city staff, because we are now starting to buy electric vehicles for city staff. Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Director Langham. Can you tell us what the rated the kilowatts that those are going to be?
What I can tell you is that they're level 2 charging stations.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Yeah. And I also want to let you know, we have to come back to council or talk to the finance director soon. I need to let you know that we actually, the supplier provided us with 2 charging posts. We asked for 1 post with 2 cables, and he gave us 2 posts with 2 cables. And we said, well, we're going to return 1 to you because we didn't budget for 2. They cut us a deal and said, don't send them back. We'll give you a discount on them. So it's still likely going to be over the budgeted amount, but the cost to bring electricity in is the same whether you have 1 post or 2. The only difference is, are we going to install both posts with 4 charging stations? So at this point, we're going to go ahead and get the electrical system in and see where we are with costs. We will likely then just proceed with installing both posts if we can afford it. If not, we might just come back to council or talk again to finance director or city administrator, see if we have the money available just to continue to proceed with putting 2 posts in for 4 charging stations. Councilmember Wook.
And would we want them both there, or is there another location on city property that we would want one?
If we were to put them on another city property, I would definitely have to come back to city council, because then we'd have to bring electricity in from somewhere else. And so that would double the budget of the project instead of just slightly over.
So I'm thinking about the new public workshop.
That site is going to have all the wiring installed, and the circuits will be able to power it. You're right, we could decide to put one of those 2 posts at the public workshop because all of that will be in the ground. That's a good point. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you for that suggestion.
Or we just order a couple posts for the public workshop, so we have even more electrification.
And we could do that too. I can find out the price. The price, I think, for each post is in the $10,000 per post range.
We might be able to fit that into the budget for the public works shop.
Yes, good point. Councilmember Storsett.
Yes, thanks. I'm just curious, as a part of this process, when we look at electrification, for some of your vehicles, I would imagine, the technology is not there for, some of these, say, diesel trucks that we need for hauling equipment and stuff. So I would take it that we're planning these chargers in accordance with what we're procuring at the time, or for so many years.
Yes, exactly. And right now we are going to be having at least one, if not two electric vehicles. They're going to be stationed as at City Hall, Civic Center. But I can tell you in the next year's budget, we're going to be requesting probably at least one electric vehicle out at the operations center, if not two.
Thanks.
Yep. All right, next project, Bogue Visitor Center rehabilitation.
Councilmember Rodenberg had a question.
Oh, I'm
Jeff.
sorry, Councilman Rodenberg.
I would, if it was me, and I was gonna buy two more from that same supplier that just got us a deal, I'd say we will buy two more if you can give us the same deal. It's like, certainly he's not losing money on the one he gave us. So, just turn it around on him. Say, we'll buy two more at that price.
But what he's avoiding is paying for the cost of shipping it back.
Yeah.
I get that. Yeah,
The error was on their side. We clearly ordered one and they shipped us two. But yes.
I'd still ask.
Well, and I'm always of the belief that you always can ask. You'll never hear yes if you don't ask.
Okay, Bogue Visitor Center. That project is, we've selected the consultant, scope and fee. We are going to be engaging on the design and permitting. This just extended the bid award date out, I think one council meeting and construction out a little bit further than that. So, but it's still proceeding, should still be done.
And Jeff, is this to do the roof and the HVAC?
Yes, the roof, re-insulation of the roof and the HVAC system.
And I only say that, council, because we committed to initiating this project before June 30th in the new lease with the chamber.
Yeah, does this mean they're gonna have to go through another summer without air conditioning?
It very well could be that we won't be able to get, well, I don't know if they don't have air conditioning. I just know that it was, don't even.
They have air conditioning that doesn't work very well.
Yeah. It's not as efficient as it could be.
Would we be able to temporarily put in a couple of those freestanding air conditioner units for them just to, if we have a particularly hot summer again, or hot couple of weeks, just like those ones from Costco that they'll cool a whole room. Just as a thought, if we can't get that done before and we have another blistering summer like we did last year.
We'll keep in touch with Miriam and see if she needs anything like that.
We may have to do that just to meet the terms of the lease.
Yeah,
That's possible. So we'll work with Miriam to make sure they're comfortable.
great.
And council, I'm going to be exiting the meeting now. I need to run, but Jeff seems to have all of this well in hand.
I believe Councilmember Denson needs to leave early as well for an event. So thank you, Councilmember Denson. Thank you, City Administrator Piasecki. Have a great night.
Bye now.
All right, Public Works Operations Center. We've updated, we're still waiting on approval of our building permits. So the bid award got moved out to April 25th. So that's what you see here. Harvey Extension construction, that's continuing, ongoing. We did not change the finish date of construction despite the change order, as we discussed at the council meeting last Monday. Rosedale Stinson, still waiting on the last few items to put up the light standards, the street lights. So annual pavement maintenance and repair. This is still on schedule. We'll be having a discussion at the March 31st study session about this, just general annual pavement maintenance process, and specifically about this year's project. Mid-block crossing system, still on track with that for the two locations, both at Hunt and Soundview, and at 50th Street near Veterans Park. Councilmember Whoop.
Yes, I called in the other day about a pothole at the overpass of Olympic and Point Fosdick. Was that sufficient enough that it needs to be repaired?
It's sufficient enough that it was put on our list. And in order to get into that intersection, we can't just put our truck out there with the flashers. We usually have to do it at night or with police support. Our staff has been almost hit too many times at that intersection.
Oh, yeah.
So it will be done. It's on our list, but we are either going to wait until we have a little bit more to do, or do it at night and with police support.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see, that's mid-block crossing systems. Burnham Drive improvements, phase 1A. That one's still proceeding through the design process and anticipated to begin construction if we receive all of our permits by this summer. Prentice Fenimore, half-width frontage improvements, that's still proceeding as scheduled. 30th Avenue Phase 2, that got moved slightly, but we do have the consultant out there we have the consultant selection process starting already. So we are going to be hopefully at council's April 25th meeting to present a consultant services contract for that design and permitting. Canterwood water tie, emergency water intertie. That is proceeding. We've had some more discussions, as you probably saw in the public outreach matrix about this, but that's proceeding, and we are going to be focusing in on getting an agreement with Washington Water and then talking with the hospital about their participation in this project. Reed Drive, that project is proceeding. The surveyors should be out there. If they haven't been out there already, they'll be out there very soon. That's proceeding on schedule. Ryan Street Lift Station 6 replacement. That construction is also proceeding on schedule. I'm going to stop my sharing this screen. I'm going to share a picture of what it looks like now, so you can see the progress that they've made. And I think I'm going to zoom in just, well, can you see that okay? It's the portrait picture. So this picture is actually over a week old. They've poured concrete in there now. So they keep coming up, up, up. Okay.
If we put a plaque on that one, we need to put George's name on it.
Yes. Yes. Well, George,
he's done a great job out there, and we've gotten a lot of compliments.
Oh, good. Yeah. I asked George to put as a side note, I asked George to put a plaque up. We've got a plaque for George for the Welcome Plaza, because George was the construction supervisor on the Welcome Plaza project. And we said, here we have this project, this plaque. It was it matched the pavers that were in the plaza. And I asked to have that put in, and I found out that George directed the contractor to put it in someplace really out of sight. So you can see it, but it's over near the drinking fountains. But anyway, I'll be more careful about where, specifically identifying where the plaque needs to go. Lift Station 12 rehabilitation, that project is proceeding on schedule. You'll start to see more construction equipment out there soon. Murphy's Landing, that's proceeding also. Wastewater treatment plant digester upgrades. That project is proceeding, but the design has been stalled a little bit. They're trying to make sure that they can design something where they can get all the materials in a timely manner. So, and then stormwater projects, Burnham Drive culvert replacement, that's proceeding also with the Burnham Drive Phase 1A improvements, but still just trying to find adequate mitigation. But we think we're still going to be able to complete all of that and be under construction this year. And then other department tasks is the utility rate study. We hope to be in front of council at a study session sometime in April. And that's it for our active projects. I do want to say really quick that we have received a suggestion to provide both the CIP public outreach document alongside the CIP schedule itself. They are two different documents. The CIP schedule identifies the projects that may impact the public or might be seen by the public. It lists the tasks that we've completed and are about to complete. And of course, the schedule we just ran through there doesn't go through that level of detail, but it does identify where we are, what we have completed, and what a lot of the anticipated schedule is going to look like. So we feel like we should be able to provide you both documents They will be, but they're not going to be merged together, but they will be in the same file. At least you can flip back and forth and refer to them. You won't see every project on both documents though. So just if you have questions about it, let me know, but we're going to probably try and implement that when we present this next time at the April 14th study session.
Great. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Yeah, you bet.
Any
Thank you.
questions from council? Okay. Well, if there is nothing else for the good of the order, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second,
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Meeting adjourned. Good evening, everyone. Have a
Bye.
fun
Good
night.
night.